The clash was inevitable. The Federation fleet had barely settled into position when the first volley of fire from the human warship struck. The force of the blast shook Thal's ship, causing the crew to lurch as their gravity stabilizers struggled to keep them grounded. Red lights flickered, alarms blared, and the hum of the energy shields trying to absorb the impact filled the command center. "Shields holding at 60%, Commander," Zara shouted, her hands flying across her console as she worked to reroute power. Thal's mind raced as he watched the human fleet move with terrifying precision. Their ships weren't just advanced in terms of firepower, they had a cohesion, a unity in their movements that spoke volumes about their capabilities. The Federation fleet, while advanced in technology, was still comprised of ships from countless worlds, each with different designs and combat styles. They lacked the synchronized force that the humans commanded. "Return fire. Full power to forward plasma cannons," Thal ordered, his voice tight with tension. The screens before him lit up with incoming data, but it was too much to process at once. The human ships were everywhere, moving in tight formations, their weapons locked onto the Federation ships. Each human ship seemed more dangerous than the last, their weapons unlike anything the Federation had faced before. The blasts coming from Earth's ships weren't just destructive. They were precise, and they weren't holding back. Thal gritted his teeth. The Federation had underestimated humanity. They thought they could intimidate them, that they could just sweep in and take over without resistance. But Earth wasn't going to be conquered. Earth wasn't going to submit. And now, the Federation was learning the hard way that humans weren't just survivors. They were fighters, and they had learned how to fight well. "We've lost a frigate, Commander." Zara's voice rang out in alarm. Thal didn't flinch. He had seen losses like this before. But this was different. The stakes were higher, the consequences graver. They were fighting for their very existence now. As much as he wanted to turn away, to fall back to Federation space and regroup, he knew it was too late for that. The moment they made the first move into human space, there was no turning back. "Target their flagship," Thal barked, his eyes narrowed. He knew that if they could take down the lead human ship, it might shatter the morale of the rest of their fleet. "All ships, focus fire on that one vessel. It has to fall." Zara's fingers danced across the console, issuing the order to the fleet. The Federation ships swiveled in unison, their guns locking onto the largest human vessel, a massive warship that hovered ominously at the front of the human fleet. Its sleek design was unlike any Federation vessel, its armor glinting in the dim light of space. It had the look of something ancient, a ship built not just for battle but for survival. "Plasma cannon ready, Commander," the weapons officer called out. "Fire," Thal shouted. The entire Federation fleet released a barrage of weapons fire in perfect harmony, the bright flashes of energy tearing through space toward the human flagship. The impact was massive, shattering the vacuum of space itself, and for a brief moment, Thal thought they might have done it. The flagship staggered, its shields flickering in the wake of the attack. But then the flagship did something unexpected. It didn't retreat. Instead, it surged forward, its engines glowing with a fierce intensity. Thal's eyes widened as the ship accelerated toward the Federation fleet, faster than any ship of its size had the right to move. It didn't just fire back. It retaliated with a devastating counterstrike. Thal had no time to react as the human warship fired a concentrated burst from its main cannon, a blast so powerful it cut straight through the Federation shields like they weren't even there. The energy wave tore through the hull of the Federation flagship, sending massive chunks of debris flying into the void. "Commander, we've lost our lead ship," Zara cried out, her voice breaking through the chaos of the battle. Thal's stomach dropped as he watched the wreckage of their flagship drift in the cold expanse of space. The Federation fleet had just suffered its first major loss, and it wasn't going to be the last. The human warship hadn't just struck with power. It had struck with purpose. It was sending a message that Thal couldn't ignore. "We can't hold them off like this." Thal muttered to himself, his fingers trembling on the command console. Every part of him wanted to believe that they could still win, that they could still turn this around. But the truth was staring him in the face. The Federation fleet was outclassed. The crew sprang into action, their minds still grappling with the impossible reality before them. But no one was ready for what happened next. Without warning, the ship's communication systems crackled to life, a static-filled message booming through their speakers. The message wasn't a standard transmission. It was a command. Stay away from Earth. The words were simple, chilling. No explanation, no reasoning, just a clear and direct warning. The Federation crew exchanged uneasy glances, trying to comprehend the meaning of this message. Earth? The human homeworld. Could it be possible? Before Thal could respond, the ship's exterior began to glow, a faint but undeniable light, as if the massive warship had awakened after centuries of slumber. The sudden brightness illuminated the dark expanse of space around them, casting eerie shadows on the Federation scout ship. The next few moments were a blur. Without warning, a powerful energy pulse shot from the warship's hull, striking the Federation ship with such force that the shockwave rattled their entire vessel. The lights flickered. Alarms blared. The crew was thrown into chaos as the ship's systems malfunctioned. Commander Thal's vision blurred as he struggled to regain control. "Get us out of here," Thal screamed, but it was too late. Another pulse erupted from the warship. This time, the energy blast was aimed directly at the scout's engines. In an instant, the ship's power was gone, its systems shutting down one by one. Thal could hear the panicked voices of his crew over the comms, but he couldn't respond. Everything was falling apart around them. The human warship loomed closer now, its massive size casting a shadow over the tiny Federation ship. It was a sight unlike any the crew had ever witnessed, something far beyond their understanding. The ship wasn't just a war machine. It was a symbol of something ancient and terrifying. And just as quickly as it had come, the human warship pulled away, vanishing back into the black void from which it had emerged. The crew of the Federation ship was left in stunned silence, their ship crippled but alive. Commander Thal's hands shook as he tried to restore communication, but the systems were down. All he could do was stare at the stars, where the warship had disappeared into the abyss. "What the hell was that?" one of the crew members whispered, his voice trembling. Thal didn't answer. He didn't know. All he knew was that something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined had just made its presence known, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Federation was left in shock. The attack had been swift, precise, and utterly overwhelming. The warship had vanished into the endless void of space, but its message remained in the minds of the surviving crew. Stay away from Earth. Those words, simple yet filled with a chilling sense of authority, haunted Commander Thal as he watched his ship's damaged systems flicker back to life. The crew was shaken, each person trying to make sense of what had just occurred. Thal gathered his crew in the control room, the atmosphere heavy with disbelief. The hum of the damaged ship's systems was the only sound in the room as they all stared at the empty stars outside. Thal's mind raced, trying to piece together what he had witnessed. A human warship, an ancient, massive vessel capable of destroying them with a single pulse. But the human race had been destroyed ages ago, or so they thought. What kind of power was this? And why had they left Earth? "Commander, we've restored partial communication," one of the technicians said, his voice trembling. I think we're receiving a response from Federation Command." "Put it through," Thal replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The crew turned their attention to the flickering screen on the wall, waiting for the transmission to come through. When the image finally resolved, the face of a Federation officer appeared, stern and composed. General Drax, a high-ranking officer known for his no-nonsense demeanor, gazed at Thal through the screen. "Commander Thal, report," Drax ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "What happened?" "We received a distress signal from your ship," but no further communication. "We've lost half our fleet, Commander," Zara cried out, her face pale as she struggled to regain control of the ship's systems. This is impossible. That ship." She couldn't finish the sentence. No words could explain what they were witnessing. They were being obliterated, and there was no way to stop it. Thal's hands clenched into fists as he stared at the screen, watching as the human ship effortlessly cut through the Federation forces. It wasn't just a battle. It was a slaughter. The Federation fleet was being torn apart, one ship at a time, and there was nothing they could do to fight back. "Commander," Zara shouted, breaking through the chaos. "The flagship, the one we targeted, it's still moving. It's heading directly for us." Thal's eyes snapped to the screen. The human flagship, which had been struck by multiple Federation volleys, was still functional. Against all odds, it was still moving, its engines glowing with an eerie red light. The Federation fleet had thrown everything they had at it, and it was still advancing. That ship was a symbol of humanity's defiance, resilient, unstoppable. And now Thal realized it was coming straight for him. Before he could react, the bridge was filled with a loud, screeching alarm. The ship's hull groaned under the strain as an overwhelming force slammed into them, the massive human flagship plowing through their formation. The sound of metal screeching against metal echoed throughout the ship as the human vessel tore through their defenses, obliterating anything in its path. The power went out. The lights flickered and then dimmed completely. For a moment, everything was still. The sounds of battle, explosions, gunfire, and screams seemed distant, muffled by the complete and total collapse of the Federation fleet. Thal stumbled to his feet, his hands gripping the console for support. His ship was barely holding together. It had been struck by the flagship, torn apart by the sheer weight of its assault. "We're losing everything," Zara whispered, her face pale, her voice shaking. "We've lost comms with the rest of the fleet. We're alone." The silence in the command center was suffocating. Thal's mind raced. They were being utterly decimated. The Federation had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated Earth's will to fight. And now, as the remnants of the fleet struggled to stay afloat in space, one thought burned in Thal's mind. Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was the center of something far more dangerous than anyone had ever realized. And the galaxy was about to learn a painful lesson. Never underestimate the power of humanity's wrath. The darkness of space was pierced by the sound of alarms, echoing throughout what was left of the Federation fleet. The stars outside seemed like distant, uncaring spectators as the human flagship, now seemingly indestructible, hovered ominously above the remnants of the once mighty Federation forces. Thal stood at the helm of his crippled ship, staring at the glowing red behemoth that had torn through their defenses like paper. His mind was reeling, and the weight of the reality was sinking in. "We are outmatched." Zara's voice was shaky as she looked at the shattered remains of the Federation ships drifting into the void. "Commander, we can't survive another direct hit. We need tow." "I know," Thal interrupted, his voice heavy with the realization that everything they had built was crumbling around them. "But retreat isn't an option anymore. We fight. We fight until we can't anymore." But even as he spoke those words, deep down, he knew that their chances of survival were slim. They had lost their fleet. They had lost their pride. They had lost the very essence of what they were. The human warship had crushed everything in its path, and it wasn't done yet. "Commander, another ship is emerging from the flagship," Zara reported, her voice full of disbelief. It's even larger than the first one. It's impossible." Thal turned to face her, his brow furrowing. "Larger? How is that possible? The flagship is all ready." Before he could finish, the massive shape on the screen began to take form. It wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress. It was a mobile command center, bristling with weapons and covered in thick, layered armor that seemed to shimmer with an unknown energy. The size of it alone seemed to bend the very laws of physics. Thal had seen warships in his time. Large ships, powerful ships, but nothing like this. "This is not a ship," Thal muttered under his breath. "This is a message. Humanity has sent us a message." The new vessel was so enormous that it cast a shadow across the already broken remains of the Federation fleet. It moved slowly, methodically, as though it were in no rush. Its very presence seemed to exude an air of absolute power, and as it advanced toward Thal's ship, he knew this was humanity's answer to everything they had tried to do. "They want to finish this now," Thal said, almost as if to himself. He turned back to Zora. "Prepare to fight. We're going to give them everything we have left." But deep down, he knew that it was hopeless. The human fleet had proven time and time again that they were more than capable of overwhelming their enemies. And now, with this new weapon on their side, the Federation had no chance. "Commander," Zora's voice broke through his thoughts. "The flagship, it's powering up. Something's coming from it. It's..." A blast of pure energy erupted from the flagship, illuminating the entire battlefield. It wasn't like the weapons they had faced before. This was on a scale that Thal couldn't comprehend. The force of the energy wave sent shockwaves through space, distorting the very fabric of reality. The Federation ships, what was left of them, were caught in the blast's path. "Get us out of here," Thal shouted, his hands gripping the controls desperately. But it was too late. The ship shuddered violently as the energy blast slammed into them with a force that could only be described as apocalyptic. Everything went dark. The next moments were nothing but a blur. The bridge was in chaos. Sparks flew from the walls, and the crew was thrown against the consoles as the ship was violently rocked by the attack. Thal's head collided with the console, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. His vision blurred, and he struggled to regain his bearings. When he finally opened his eyes, the world around him was a nightmare. The once pristine bridge was now a twisted mess of debris and shattered glass. The ship's systems were down, and the crew members were either unconscious or dead. Zara, who had been at her station, lay motionless on the floor. Thal pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the pain in his side as he stumbled toward the console. He could barely make out the readouts in the dim light, but one thing was clear: the Federation ship was doomed. There was no coming back from this. He looked out the viewports, his eyes narrowing as he saw the human fleet, what was left of it, gathering in formation around the massive new vessel. The Federation was done. The galaxy had seen Earth's true power, and now it would never forget. The human fleet didn't just fight for survival. They fought for dominance, and they had achieved it. "Commander," Zara's voice came through, weak but still filled with determination. "We're alive. We can still fight. We can." "No," Thal said softly, his voice almost a whisper. "We can't. It's over." For a long moment, he stood there in the ruined command center, staring at the human warships that surrounded them. The terror he had felt earlier, the fear of the unknown, had given way to something else. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was respect. "Humanity doesn't back down," Thal whispered to himself, "and neither do we." But deep down, he knew that they were fighting a battle they could never win. And that, in itself, was the most terrifying realization of all. As he turned to face the wreckage of his ship, Thal understood the truth that the galaxy was just beginning to learn. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had become something far more powerful, and the galaxy, for all its might, was about to be reshaped in their image. The Federation had made its last mistake. The humans were here, and they were unstoppable. "We have to retreat, Commander," Zara said, her voice soft but resolute. "If we don't, we'll all be destroyed." But retreat wasn't an option. Not now. The Federation had crossed into human space. To pull back now would be to admit defeat, something Thal couldn't live with. "Not yet," he said, his voice low but filled with determination. "We keep fighting. We'll make them pay for every ship they take." As he spoke, A new blip appeared on the radar. It was unlike anything Thal had seen before. A new ship, larger than anything in the human fleet. Its silhouette was dark, almost impossible to make out against the backdrop of space. But its presence was undeniable. It was coming for them, and it was coming fast. Thal's breath caught in his throat as he realized what it meant. The human fleet had a secret weapon, and it had just arrived. "Brace for impact," Thal ordered, his voice tight with dread. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." The massive ship that had just appeared on the radar was no ordinary vessel. Its design was unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered. It was sleek, almost organic, with deep, dark plating that shimmered with an otherworldly energy. The sheer size of it made every other ship in the fleet seem like a speck of dust in comparison. Thal's heart pounded as he watched it approach, its engines glowing with a fiery intensity, casting a faint red hue across the battlefield. "Commander, that ship. It's moving directly toward us," Zara said, her voice laced with disbelief. "It's not even firing. It's just moving." Thal watched as the human warship cut through space, indifferent to the chaos unfolding around it. The other human ships, which had been relentlessly pounding the Federation fleet, seemed to open up a path for this new arrival. It was as if they were making way for something far more powerful, something that could end this battle with a single blow. "Is it a weapon?" one of the crew members asked, his voice trembling. Thal didn't answer at first. He had no words to describe the unease settling in his gut. Every fiber of his being screamed that they were facing something far beyond anything they could imagine. It wasn't just a ship, it was an executioner. As the massive vessel drew closer, the energy readings spiked off the charts. Thal's eyes narrowed. He could feel the overwhelming power emanating from it, a presence that made the Federation fleets might seem insignificant. "We need to stop it before it reaches us," Thal barked, his voice sharp as he snapped out of his daze. "All ships, target that vessel. Full power to all weapons." The Federation ships scrambled to reposition themselves, their guns locking onto the new threat. But Thal knew, deep down, that it was already too late. The moment that ship had appeared, it had changed everything. The odds were no longer in their favor. Zara's fingers flew across the console, but as the weapons systems powered up, something unexpected happened. A strange ripple passed through space, as though the very fabric of reality was being warped. A shockwave emanated from the giant ship, and the Federation ships, once so coordinated and ready for combat, suddenly found themselves out of sync. The energy readings were fluctuating wildly. "What is happening?" Zara exclaimed, her voice filled with panic. Thal didn't have an answer. The disturbance from the human ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was as if the ship itself was manipulating the very laws of physics. Weapons systems were offline. Shields flickered and sputtered. The Federation fleet, powerful though it was now helpless. "Prepare to disengage," Thal shouted, realizing that there was no way to win this battle. "Full retreat, now." But just as he gave the order, the human ship made its move. It fired. No, it released something far more devastating than any weapon Thal had ever encountered. A beam of pure energy, so bright and intense it nearly blinded the crew, shot out from the heart of the massive vessel. It connected with the nearest Federation ship with terrifying precision, and the explosion that followed was cataclysmic. A ripple of destruction spread outward, taking out several other ships in the process. "All ships, brace for impact," Thal yelled, but it was already too late. The blast wave hit them, slamming into the Federation fleet with the force of 1,000 storms. Thal felt his stomach lurch as his own ship was rocked by the shockwave. The entire bridge seemed to shake beneath him, the walls groaning under the strain. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered as the ship's systems struggled to stay online. Thal took a deep breath, fighting the urge to look away from the screen. He knew this wouldn't be easy to explain. The Federation had always prided itself on its technological superiority, and now they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. "General," Thal began, his voice measured, "we encountered a human warship, an ancient vessel, massive, powerful, and armed with technology we've never seen before. It attacked us without warning, disabling our ship with a single pulse." There was a brief silence on the other end of the transmission. General Drax's face was unreadable, but Thal could see the slightest narrowing of his eyes. "A human warship," Drax repeated, as if trying to understand the absurdity of the statement. "But the humans were wiped out centuries ago. We have records." "I know," Thal interrupted, his frustration growing. "We all thought the same, but it wasn't a mistake. The warship was human. Of that, I'm certain. It's not a relic. It's alive." Drax stared at him for a long moment, the weight of the situation settling between them. The Federation had long believed that humanity had been eradicated, wiped out by an ancient war they had never truly understood. But this was different. This was something far more terrifying. "Commander Thal, you're certain of this?" Drax asked, his voice no longer dismissive but filled with concern. "You've seen the ship." "I've seen it, and heard its message," Thal replied, his voice low. "It warned us to stay away from Earth. And I believe it. Whoever is on that ship, they aren't the humans we thought we knew." General Drax's eyes hardened. "You will return to Federation space immediately. We need to analyze this information thoroughly. Prepare your ship for repairs and report to us as soon as possible." "Understood, General." Thal saluted before cutting the transmission. He turned to face his crew, who were all still in stunned silence, their minds grappling with the new reality they faced. "We'll head back to Federation space," Thal said, his voice quiet but firm. "We have to warn them. We have to understand what we've encountered." The crew nodded, though their expressions were a mixture of fear and curiosity. They had been the first to encounter this unknown force, and now they were tasked with reporting it to the Federation. But deep down, each person knew the truth. They weren't ready for what was coming. As the Federation ship limped back toward familiar space, Thal stood at the helm, staring into the abyss of stars. His thoughts kept returning to that warship, the sheer size of it, the power it had displayed, the chilling calmness of its message. It was a force beyond anything the Federation had ever faced. And the question burned in his mind: why had it come now? The Federation was about to learn that the humans they thought they knew were not the same species that had once lived on Earth. And the galaxy would soon understand that what had been hidden in the void was a power unlike anything they could have imagined. The next few days were tense as Thal's ship drifted through the dark expanse, its damaged systems slowly coming back online. But there was no escaping the gnawing unease that settled over the crew. Every sensor sweep, every moment of silence, felt like the calm before a storm. They had been warned. And now they could only wonder what Earth's true legacy had become. By the time they reached Federation space, a feeling of dread had taken root in Thal's heart. The Federation wasn't ready for this. No one was. And when they learned the truth, it would be too late to turn back. The Federation's response was swift. A fleet was assembled, and an expedition to Earth was planned. But Commander Thal knew one thing: if Earth's warship was only the first sign of what lay in wait, the galaxy was about to face something far darker than they had ever feared. The Federation had underestimated humanity, and now they were going to pay the price. The Federation's response was quick, but it was not nearly enough. Thal watched in silence as the fleet of ships, mighty and brimming with advanced technology, began assembling in the hangar bay. They were preparing for the journey to Earth, but the commander could sense the growing unease in the air. He could hear it in the murmur of conversations among his crew, in the way they avoided eye contact, and in the tension that had settled over the entire ship. Everyone knew that the true nature of humanity had been hidden from them, and the fear of the unknown was taking hold. Thal wasn't afraid of the Federation. He wasn't afraid of the ships, the soldiers, or even the endless vastness of space. But that warship, he could still hear the sound of its engines, the hum that had vibrated through his bones, as it had powered up ready to fire. The cold message it had delivered was still fresh in his mind. Stay away from Earth. The words seemed to echo louder in his mind with each passing day. We're heading straight for a trap, aren't we? Whispered Lieutenant Zara, the ship's chief tactical officer. She had been Thal's closest ally during the attack, and her sharp mind had helped him assess the damage they'd sustained. But now, her face was pale, her eyes clouded with doubt. Thal didn't answer immediately. He understood her fear. He shared it. But there was more at play than just a trap. He could feel it. There was a history there, something ancient and unknown, buried beneath the surface of the galaxy, something that the Federation had never bothered to understand, something that was about to change everything. We don't know what we're walking into, Thal finally said. The Federation believes this is just another threat to neutralize. They don't understand the stakes. He let out a heavy sigh, looking over at Zara. I don't think they realize just how much humanity has changed. This warship wasn't a relic. It was alive. And if what we saw is just the tip of the iceberg. He didn't finish the thought. There was no need to. Everyone on the bridge knew exactly what he meant. Zara looked out the viewport, her fingers tapping nervously against the console in front of her. They won't listen to us. They never do. I don't care if they listen, Thal said, his voice firm. We've seen what we needed to see. We know the truth now. And if we survive this, the Federation will know it too. But even as Thal spoke, a knot tightened in his chest. He had never been one for conspiracy theories, but the thought that the Federation might have been hiding something vital about humanity, gnawed at him. Why had they erased all records of the human race? Why had they buried their history so thoroughly? And why was there a warship, powerful enough to wipe out an entire fleet, still out there? The journey to Earth was long, and with every passing hour, the crew's anxiety grew. They spent their days preparing for the worst, calibrating weapons systems, running simulations, and reviewing battle strategies. The message they had received from the human warship, the warning to stay away, had shaken the Federation to its core. But as they drew closer to Earth's orbit, the question that loomed over them was simple. Would they find the answers they sought, or would they face something far worse? Days turned into weeks as the Federation fleet navigated through the uncharted space leading to Earth. They encountered no more signs of the human warship, no more evidence of what they had seen before. But the dread that hung over the crew was palpable. Everyone was on edge, their nerves frayed. Thal found it hard to sleep at night, haunted by images of the warship's glowing engines, the unsettling hum that resonated through his bones, and the cold, emotionless message it had delivered. Finally, the fleet arrived in Earth's orbit. The planet, once a cradle of life, was a forgotten world in the eyes of most of the galaxy's inhabitants. It had been left to decay, to be consumed by time and space. The Federation's records indicated that the humans who once called it home had been destroyed in an ancient war, an extinction event that had wiped out their entire species, or so they thought. In the vast reaches of the galaxy, where peace was believed to reign, the Galactic Federation felt unshakable in their control. The stars twinkled like distant lights of stability, but nothing could have prepared them for the shock that was about to hit. The Federation's leaders, confident in their military might and advanced technology, were planning their next conquest, eager to expand their already vast empire. But in the farthest corner of space, on the outermost edge of their known universe, something far more mysterious than they could comprehend was waiting. It began with a simple signal, weak, barely noticeable, and easily dismissed by the Federation's most advanced scanners. At first, they assumed it was nothing but cosmic noise. But as the days passed, the signal didn't fade. It grew. Strange. Unsettling. It seemed to be coming from deep within the uncharted zones, where no species had dared venture for centuries. It was human. The Federation's top commanders were quick to dismiss the idea. Humans. They had long been considered a primitive species, wiped out in a long-forgotten conflict. They were believed to have vanished into the annals of history. Yet here was a signal from a place no one should be able to send one from. It was impossible. Ignoring the initial doubt, they ordered a ship to investigate. A scout vessel, small but fast, was dispatched to find the source of this anomaly. The Federation was not used to surprises, and this was something they wouldn't let go unnoticed. As the vessel sped toward the coordinates of the signal, the crew remained unaware of the danger lurking beyond the distant stars. Commander Thal, a seasoned officer who had seen countless battles and countless victories, was in charge of the mission. His crew of experts, scientists, technicians, and navigators were all on edge. The ship hummed with activity, its systems analyzing every inch of the deep void before them. Nothing in their data suggested there should be anything significant at this location, yet the signal persisted. "This is ridiculous," one of the technicians muttered as he worked on his console, squinting at the display. "There's no reason for this signal to be here. It's not even a proper format." "It's enough," Thal interrupted, his voice sharp. "We're here to do one thing: find the source of this signal. If it's some kind of joke, we'll laugh about it later. But if it's not, then we need to be ready for whatever it is." The crew nodded, though they could feel the tension building, each person lost in their own thoughts. They were traveling deeper into the unknown, a place where even their advanced technology failed to provide clear answers. There were whispers among the crew of ghost stories, of ancient legends about human ships that had vanished long ago. Legends the Federation dismissed as nothing more than tales. But now, those whispers began to feel like something more. As the ship approached the coordinates, the signal grew louder. It wasn't like anything they had ever encountered before. It wasn't a distress call or a plea for help. It was almost like a challenge. A strange thought passed through Thal's mind. Who or what could be sending a signal in such a manner from this desolate part of the galaxy? The ship's sensors suddenly pinged, indicating a massive object nearby. The ship's crew froze. Thal ordered the lights dimmed as they all peered out into the vast blackness of space. For a moment, there was nothing, only the cold emptiness. But then a shadow loomed. The outline of a massive ship appeared before them, far larger than anything they had ever seen. The Federation had been to war with many species, but never had they encountered such a colossal vessel. It was an enigma, its size, its shape, and the fact that it was human. The ship seemed to shimmer against the backdrop of stars, like it had always been there, hidden away. There was no sign of life aboard, yet the hum of its engines vibrated through the ship, a deep, resonating sound that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. "Are we seeing this?" one of the technicians asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thal didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing. He had seen warships, dreadnoughts, and battleships. But this was something else entirely. It was human. He didn't know how or why, but it was unmistakably of human design. "Raise shields," he ordered, his voice steady. "Prepare for anything." "Commander," Lieutenant Zara said, breaking the silence. "We've got something on the radar. It's massive. It's coming from Earth." Thal's eyes snapped to the screen. A new blip had appeared, growing rapidly in size. It wasn't a ship. It was something far more menacing. Thal's mind raced as he processed the readings. "It's not just one warship," Zara said. "It's an entire fleet, all emerging from the surface of Earth." Thal's breath caught in his throat. Impossible. But there it was, dozens, no, hundreds of warships, each one more advanced than the last. The Federation had never seen anything like this. The scale of what was unfolding before them was beyond comprehension. Earth had not just been hiding one ship. It had been hiding an entire fleet, one that had been waiting, ready to rise from the depths of the planet. The Federation fleet had no time to react. The first wave of human warships emerged from the atmosphere with incredible speed. Their hulls glinted with unfamiliar materials, their weapons locked and ready. Thal's mind raced as the magnitude of what he was seeing dawned on him. These weren't just warships. They were the legacy of a civilization that had once been wiped from the galaxy. These ships, these weapons, they were proof that humanity had never truly been gone. They had been biding their time, growing stronger, building a force that was now poised to strike. "Commander," Zara's voice broke through his thoughts. "We're receiving new orders from Federation Command." Thal snapped his attention to the screen. A new message had come through, this time from General Drax. His face was grim, his voice carrying the weight of the situation. "Commander Thal, do not engage the human fleet. Return to Federation space immediately. You do not have authorization for combat." Thal's jaw tightened. His hand gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white. "General, with all due respect, we don't have time to wait. If we don't engage now, we'll all be dead." Drax's face hardened on the screen. "That is an order, Commander. I repeat, return to Federation space." For a brief moment, Thal felt the weight of those words. The Federation had issued its command, but it didn't understand. It didn't understand the urgency, the danger they were in. Thal had seen it with his own eyes. The power of the human warships, the cold precision of their message. He had felt the overwhelming presence of something much greater than the Federation could imagine. "Prepare to engage," Thal said, his voice filled with resolve. "We can't let them overwhelm us." He turned to Zara. "Set course for the human fleet. All weapon systems. Target their lead ship. We're not running from this." Zara hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face. But then she nodded. "Aye, Commander." The Federation fleet, despite its technological superiority, was outmatched. The human warships were more advanced, more powerful, and the battle that was about to unfold would change the course of galactic history forever. But Thal wasn't going to back down. He knew that if the Federation didn't face this threat head-on, they would be wiped out without ever understanding what had truly happened to humanity. As the Federation fleet moved into position, the human ships closed in. The silence that hung over the battlefield was shattered by the deafening roar of weapons fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams cut through space like lightning, lighting up the dark void. Thal's hands gripped the controls as his ship shuddered under the assault. The human fleet wasn't just fighting to defend, they were fighting to prove something. And Thal realized, with a sinking feeling in his stomach, that they weren't just defending Earth. They were proving to the galaxy that humanity was back, and they had come to reclaim what was once theirs. The Federation fleet dropped out of hyperspace, revealing the barren landscape of Earth. The planet was a desolate wasteland, its once thriving cities now reduced to rubble. Nothing moved. No life. Nothing but the remains of a civilization long lost. The silence was deafening. But as the fleet approached, a chilling signal began to pulse from the surface, a signal so powerful it could not be ignored. It wasn't coming from any Federation ship. It was a message, and it was unmistakable. Thal felt his heart race as the transmission crackled to life on the comm system. "Warning. You have entered human space," the voice on the other end said, mechanical but filled with an unmistakable weight. "You are trespassing. Depart immediately or face annihilation." The message repeated over and over, each iteration growing louder, more insistent. It was the same message they had received before, but this time it was even more chilling. The Federation had no answers. They had no idea what was happening, no understanding of the power they were about to face. Thal's mind raced as the reality of the situation settled in. This was no longer just an encounter with a long-lost species. It was a war, one that the Federation was ill-prepared to fight. The warning was clear. Humanity was back, and they had returned with a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Prepare for battle," Thal ordered, his voice calm but filled with the weight of what was to come. "We have no choice but to face them. We can't run from this." But as the fleet readied itself for the worst, Thal couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Whatever force had been lying dormant on Earth for so long was about to awaken, and the galaxy was about to find out that humanity's warships were not relics. They were very much alive. and they were ready to fight. The Federation fleet was now in the heart of Earth's orbit, its ships poised for whatever might come next. Every crew member felt the weight of what they were about to face. The message was clear, and the stakes could not be higher. But Thal knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back now. As the Federation ships arranged themselves in tight formation, the eerie silence of the vast expanse of space seemed to grow even more oppressive. Even the stars, brilliant and distant, offered no comfort. Earth, once a vibrant home to billions, was now a scared, forgotten world, silent but not empty. Thal stood at the helm of his ship, his eyes scanning the monitors. The readings were unlike anything he had seen before. The power emanating from Earth was unimaginable, far beyond anything that the Federation could generate. And yet, it was all coming from a single, mysterious source. "We're receiving another transmission," Lieutenant Zora said, her voice tense. She turned to Thal, eyes wide with apprehension. "It's stronger this time." Thal turned to face the comm screen. The familiar mechanical voice crackled through, sending chills down his spine. "Warning, you have entered human-controlled space. Leave immediately, or you will be destroyed." The message repeated itself, its tone colder, more menacing. But there was something else in it this time, something hidden beneath the mechanical delivery. It was as if the voice, whatever it was, had learned to convey not just a warning, but something deeper, a sense of finality. The Federation fleet was trespassing, and humanity had made it clear that they would not tolerate this intrusion. The silence that followed was deafening. No one spoke. No one moved. Thal could feel the eyes of his crew on him, waiting for orders. The tension was unbearable, each moment stretching out in the void. Finally, Thal spoke, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We have no choice but to engage. The Federation will not back down." He turned to Zora. "Prepare the fleet, all weapons, online, and ready for action." Zora nodded without a word, her eyes flicking to the weapons control station. The technicians quickly moved into position, and the sound of their fingers tapping at the consoles filled the room as the ship's systems powered up. Thal's heart pounded as he felt the familiar hum of the weapons systems coming online. But even as his crew moved with efficiency and precision, Thal couldn't shake the nagging thought that they were walking into a trap.